So the title of the presentation is Genetic Characterization of FMD Virus Isolated during a Cross-Sectional Surveillance Studies in Cattle from Uganda during 2014-16. Uganda is divided into 4 regions: North, Western, Eastern, and Central region. And within that regions, we have 112 districts. And out of those 112 districts, there were 37 districts from where these samples were collected. And the epidemiological unit was farms, and the species from where these samples were collected were cattle. The samples collected were probang and serum samples, and those were tested by real-time PCR, virus isolation, sequencing, and NSP ELISA. There were 9 districts. These are the region-wise districts detail that were sampled during the current study. If you see, we have collected a total of 21,900, almost 22,000 samples, including both serum and probang during a different time period. And all of these probang samples and serum samples were tested using NSP ELISA. The probang samples were screened by real-time PCR initially, and then followed by virus isolation and sequencing. So in 2014 and 15, if you see in the northern region on the top, in 2014, serotype O was isolated, and in 2015, serotype O, isolated from for both the years. Whereas in the central region, in 2014, there were no isolations that were seen. But in 2015, we saw serotype O isolations in central region. If you see in the western region, during 2014, serotype SAT2 was isolated, and in 2015, SAT1 and O were isolated, but there were no SAT2 isolations. In the eastern region, serotype O was isolated during both the years. This is the district-wise details of virus isolations and sequencing. And we've isolated 133 viruses belonging to the 3 serotypes, SAT1, SAT2, and O. And O is the most prevalent serotype in Uganda. And if you see the topology of these viruses, serotype O isolated from all the regions belongs to East Africa 2 lineage, whereas SAT1 isolated was from East Africa 1 group 4, and SAT2 belongs to the group 10 lineage of the. And if you see the serosurveillance or seroprevalence of FMDV by NSP ELISA, and you can see the major clustering in the eastern and the northern region of Uganda. So there are about 39% of serosurveillance of FMDV in that country. The VP1 sequencing of the serotype O indicates, and when we compared it with the older isolates of Uganda, 2009 and 2006, all of them belong to East Africa 2, but they are forming a subgroup which is closely related with the 2008 Uganda isolates. This is the district-wise phylogeny of serotype O. And if you see in certain areas, there are few isolates which falls in different subgroups. Like in Albertong, if you see the red dots, they are forming in 2 different groups. And then if you see the gray squares, they are also forming like 2 subgroups there. The SAT1 belongs to the group, the topotype 10, and it is closely related with the Uganda isolate of 1998. SAT1, we haven't, these belongs to East Africa 1, subgroup 4, but we have to do further analysis of the serotype. Based on these phylogenies and the viral isolations that we have selected few viruses from SAT1, SAT2, and O, and we are planning to do some antigen matching studies in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We will move on. I encourage people to contact the presenter at his poster. The next one will